we're looking at this as, we're not looking at this as solving all the problems tonight. Tonight is really just an opportunity to review these documents, to give the updates. We do want to address the oral communication questions that were raised, and then schedule our next meeting. And it may take additional special meetings in order to get this accomplished.
I have a question. Problems. Can we be privy to what you are considering problems and that we can address specifically as we go through this? Is there, is there something that we need to be aware of? That we're,
I think one of
what issues are we
I think
up
one
against?
of the issues that I see, and this isn't, I want to be clear that this is not just a West Covina Youth League issue. I think this is a Youth League issue that happens no matter where you go. You have well-intended volunteers, right? You have a board of volunteers, and when you have volunteers on a board, and a lot of them have been around for a while, when they leave, what do they take with them? They take with them the know-how, they take with them the historical knowledge, they take with them, unfortunately, the processes. And you really can't tie them to it because it's a volunteer position and they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. When those sorts of things occur, what happens? Some of the documentations or the filings might slip through the crack. And it puts us in a difficult position because, okay, we don't ever want to be in a spot where we deny someone access to the leagues just because one volunteer forgot or didn't know that they were supposed to file a form. And really where we see that happening, again, this is not just a West Covina problem, and I'm not going to call out any league specifically. I've seen this in other cities that I've worked for too. Sometimes they may lose their nonprofit status just because they didn't, or they're kind of frozen for a little bit just because they didn't file a form. So sometimes that takes a little bit of time. So we really try to give those organizations and those groups some grace.
It is. It's across many entities that have volunteers. No, it doesn't matter. We have volunteers. They're just that, and they fall off, and new ones come on, and they don't understand the procedures. We've seen it happen over and over. So, helping them through the process is important.
And that's one of the challenges that we see. And I'm speaking administratively. I know you've got some too that you'll definitely share. The other one that I see too, and just in that same vein with the group of volunteers, is that there's an assumption by some of these groups because they're starting, or not the groups, but some of the volunteers, maybe they start with, okay, their son or their daughter is grandchild, whoever it is that they're supporting, they're playing a sport, they're participants in the sport. Then they see an opportunity to get involved and, they want to do a good job, but they see, okay, well, certain things happen and certain things don't happen. And there is a misunderstanding with the leagues, especially as you get new volunteers in, on what their role is versus what the city's role is. And I think that the commission definitely plays a role in that, because understanding, what the balance is between, the leagues and their responsibilities versus the city's responsibilities. At the end of the day, we're partners, and it's not that we don't do something because we don't want to do it. It's that there's just certain agreements and certain understandings that the bylaws dictate that we stick to. So again, just making sure that this body is aware, as well as educating new members, new volunteers that come onto the boards of these various organizations, making sure that they're aware. So while that responsibility doesn't solely rest on you, we definitely have a role in that. That's our responsibility. But we also look at you guys as, you help to disseminate that message too. So just knowing that there are bylaws, that there's a sports council, and that really, that those relationships are in place and really dictate field allocations, I think is valuable for you. Mike?
Field allocation is very difficult. All the things Roxanne talked about, we try to be, obviously we don't file leagues taxes and do those things, but we try to help them wherever we can. We try to make sure we get that information. The 501c3 is a big part of the bylaws and things we try to follow, but The field allocation, it comes down to the major problem that we have. If a league decides that they're going to take 600 registrations, but they only have, and we don't have the space, is it the city's responsibility to provide them the space? We try to be very transparent about what we have, what resources what we have, and what we can do. And as discussed earlier, Palmview, we want to fill every space we have to the public for whatever the public wants to do to recreate. I mean, I think that's been our motto and our goal. So dealing with the field allocation is the biggest part of Sports Council, and the lines have started to get blurred because there isn't seasonal sports anymore. It's hard to define what's in season and what's not. If a league decides to grow, is it the city's responsibility to provide them field space if they don't have it? And that's something that happens to us quite regularly.
So talking about what's in season and what's not, you have your traditional seasons for sports, but we're now at a point, and again, this is not just a West Covina issue. This is an issue no matter where you go. Other cities and organizations are trying to address the same concern. You have a lot of kids that are hungry to play, and you have some really talented athletes that are out there. And so one of the ways that the leagues like to cultivate that and to build up the kids is to offer that sport for a longer period of time. So where you would traditionally have your Little League starting to play, February practice, registration January, February, practicing opening day, March through the spring, then you have something like fall ball that comes in, and then we have a little bit of a problem. And the problem, it's not a problem that they're there. The problem is in that same space, you have another league that is in their traditional season. And so it's trying to find that balance of, okay, well, yes, those fields are available. We're available for the spring season, but part of that field is actually utilized, because these groups are growing, for other leagues that perhaps would play in the fall. Again, I'm not trying to point any fingers, but I think that that's one of the obvious challenges that we're trying to assist our leagues in finding a solution to.
Mike, do they still play at the elementary schools? Are those fields even open to our students?
They are available. They are available, but there's a cost to them. So, and I don't know the cost, and I think if they have a criteria, then if you meet that criteria, well, I don't think it's a very high cost, but there is a cost, and obviously leagues want to go where they don't have to pay a cost. And then depending on...
But we charge a cost.
No, we
not
don't.
to league. Sports Council, yeah.
We do not charge it to Sports Council. So as long as they meet those requirements, that's what we ask. We ask them to meet these requirements. They're nonprofit
The
status.
Bruins don't pay a fee to use the senior center or anything else?
They do not.
Huh. I'm
They do
told they
not.
are.
They do not.
The only exception
exception is the sports complex.
Yes.
That's the only exception. But for everything else, they don't have to pay a fee, and neither do any of the other leagues that are members of the Sports Council. They don't pay a fee. So it's that exchange. We want to provide that service to our youth. There's a benefit. There's a value that's associated with that, but what the city council has determined, what's on the books right now, is the value to provide those spaces for our youth is greater than taking in
Revenue.
a fee.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what's been on the books. Okay. That's what's here now. Now, let's say a group or an organization that's outside of Sports Council wants to reserve the field. And I know from time to time we do that. We'll have travel ball teams. Well, then there would be a fee. There would be a fee associated
right,
with
no,
it.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I was told and under the impression that the Bruins pay a fee for practice and for the fields outside of the sports complex.
If they're utilizing other spaces, such as one of the schools, that may very well be, but the city does not.
No, it's not.
The city does not charge them a fee.
Yeah, we have not charged any league outside of the sportsplex for any field usage. And, you know, obviously there is a system in place, there's a fining system. If you're not compliant, things, we've done that, but that also, you know, we've followed our rules, but it, you know, depending on the situation, they get compliant in those things cases. In my entire time here, I don't think any league is paid. You know, and I haven't always been involved with sports councils I am now, but I mean, I have a long history here, and I do not recall anybody ever paying.
So let me ask you this. Do the Bruins cheerleaders pay a fee to practice or use you because they fall into a sports league?
They're still part of sports council. They're an extension. So if they're paying, they, I guess, like Mike said and I said, if they're using the sports complex, then yes. But if they're not, then
there has been discussion about Cameron. So we don't want to talk specific leagues here, but we try to provide all the space we have.
Right.
If a league should not like what we're providing, alternatives could be offered, and there could be a cost to that, depending on what it is. But no, we provide equal opportunity for softball, baseball, cheer, all those leagues.
football.
How many groups total would you guess?
Soccer. Thank you.
There's 3 little leagues. There's Pony, Westview Soccer, and the Bruins. There's 7. Some 6. I can't count. I had an extra finger.
You have to
6.
convince.
6.
7.
And we're down. Obviously, we used to have Westview basketball, but they are no longer. They are defunct, and they actually couldn't. You know, that was an organization that we gave every opportunity to get compliant, and unfortunately, they were unable to.
And it's not that they can't use the space if they can't gain compliance. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is what's been approved for us, and what we can do is, if you're not complying and meeting this criteria, then you would have to reserve the space and pay that fee. So we never turn someone away. It's just that if they can't comply with providing proof of their nonprofit status and whatever their the residency requirement, if that should be changed, if they can't comply, then it puts everyone in a tough spot. Then our hands are tied, and so that's why these conversations are so important. And Chair Torres, I think you brought up a very valid point about the residency rate. You know, the last time this was amended was in 2007, and so we're 16 years, some odd years later, 16 years later, and we're reviewing it now, and probably most of it's the first time that you've seen it.
May I ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
So the first thought that comes to mind is the paperwork compliance, the nonprofit status, the insurance. So usually with a volunteer group or an organization, whoever it is, if your I's are not dotted, your T's are not crossed, then that's generally a red flag.
Absolutely.
So speaking to the bare basics of what an entity is about, the sports council then steps in and do they provide assistance and guidance separate from what the city might require? Because ultimately, if anything happens at the park, the city might have to step in. But from the gate, if I am representing a small group, I want to make sure I have everything in order not only to protect the entity, but to protect the participants. So I guess it's a little fuzzy to me as who's helping who, and what is the sports council's role in moving them along?
Well, they're a voting body just like the commission is. So they allow, you know, if you want to go become a sports council member, you would come to sports council, you provide your information, and then they would vote you in or out.
Okay.
So I don't think that's exactly what you're asking, but as far as help goes, they do help each other. They do provide alternative stuff. We provide what we can and go out of our way to help them in every way we can, but sometimes somebody might be a little bit more savvy in league taxes or something like that, and they will help each other, but that's not through the city.
No.
Is that what you're asking?
Kind of, because I see that maybe as your first step. So I guess my second and third question then would speak to the issue of is it the city's responsibility to try to accommodate a league or a sports event that maybe oversold its spots, or because it was such a popular thing in our community because the demographics have changed, or sports, the sport of the day has changed, or a group, let's say for example, the basketball group was unable to comply with the bare minimum requirements, which are all legal requirements. And so now you have a defunct group, but you still have the youth that need to play sports. And we still have the families who want their kids to play sports, so then you move those kids, if you're able to, maybe to baseball.
I can give an example. You know, you okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So in the example you gave, West Youth Basketball went defunct. Somebody came in and said, I want to run basketball. I don't want to follow the bylaws. I'm going to pay your rental rate. So we still have a basketball league here in the city of West Covina, and they are just not a member of Sports Council. They rent Cameron Community Center and they pay for it.
Right.
And then the other avenue too is that there is a youth basketball program through our rec.
Right.
That's a lower fee. It's not as competitive. Recreation isn't meant to be that. So there are other avenues that those children can be pointed in that direction. But I hear what you're saying. Whose responsibility is it? If there's not, is that what you're saying as far as space is concerned?
I'm gonna say that is the toughest part of my job, and ever since I've been involved in Sports Council, I try to be transparent in anything I do. I tell leagues, please do not go register 500 kids until you talk to me, so I can find out if I can accommodate you. Now I'm gonna tell you, it never goes well. It never goes well for me. It's a very difficult thing to manage, and that's something that I've let Roxanne know and every supervisor I had before that. But we try to manage it, and obviously we want people to recreate, and we want to be as fair as we can. So I try to coordinate with all leagues, get a little concession over here, a little give and take, and do that. We just had our first field allocation meeting, and it went really, really well.
Yeah.
There were some challenges. There are challenges, but it was nice to actually get in a room and let everybody see what we have. Like, give everybody an idea. Like, wow, there only is 7 fields in the city, and there is only this much time, and keeping expectations realistic. So that is something we're constantly working towards.
And then just to piggyback off of that too, it's not just okay. We have these bylaws. We're making sure that you're in compliance. We're also bringing those leagues together so that when challenges arise or when there are conflicts, that a lot of this can be worked out. That scheduling and all of that can be worked out. With the groups coming together. And that way, we try to eliminate as much as we can the he said, she said, or the finger pointing, because when you have the body together, people tend to listen, and we all try to hold each other accountable sometimes to remind people what they've said previously. But yeah, Mike has expressed that that is a big challenge now, that some of these leagues are just outgrowing their space.
I have another question, Mike. You talked about the basketball team paying outside of, but they still have to follow our bylaws, even though they're paying.
They would follow, they would follow a rental agreement, is what they would follow.
They would provide insurance.
But I'm sure there's rules in the rental agreement.
So there are rules for using the different facilities, yes. Okay. So in the example of
that fall outside of our bylaws.
Correct. Well, these are Sports Council bylaws.
Right.
So this doesn't govern everyone else. This is just a very important piece of the usage of the park. Probably what the majority of the usage of each park is this. And so that's why we wanted to have this, start with this first and have that conversation and answer your questions. But yeah, so for Cameron Community Center, if someone was going to utilize the basketball court, there are rules and regulations and insurance requirements that would fall under a facility reservation and would not be this. And yes, if you were, if there was a youth basketball organization that was part of Sports Council, they would still have to comply with the facility use, as well as the nonprofit status and the residency requirements and all of that kind of stuff.
So just as a point of clarification, who checks who checks those boxes for, let's say, that entity that comes in and says, I want to be a member of Sports Council, this is what I'm bringing, but who in the body of the Sports Council double checks to make sure that they're in compliance with, say, their nonprofit status, taxes, and all that other really good stuff, their own bylaws, how they did how that person was even nominated or elected to represent the body.
Take a look at, so if this is for a new group coming in.
Right.
Okay, so take a look at section 2. Number 5. So new organizations desiring membership on the Sports Council shall apply in writing 1 month prior to the membership vote and must comply with Article 1, Section 2(9) of the bylaws. So as far as compliance is concerned, staff reviews those documentation. So it's not the groups themselves, it's staff that reviews the documentation. If we could take just a little bit of time, Mike, if you wouldn't mind, I think it's important that you share with them, your process that you undertook for field allocations, how you started, when you started in the fall, working towards January in order to get those fields scheduled.
Well, in order, first and foremost, to even let anybody be eligible for, like we basically said, you provide us what we need, which is all the documents we talked about, to even get in. So we notified them, and then from there, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of things talked about, because there were so many changes. For example, Friendship Park on the south end of town was a league and it went defunct. Well, nobody ever wanted it before, and so we were renting it as by law state. But then things were changing, people needed more space, so there was lots of discussion about, okay, are we going to utilize everything? And maybe you don't want to go to the south end of town, but that's the only field space we have, so if you're going to grow, that's going to have to be an option. So it was a lot of dialogue of explaining what facilities we have available, and actually getting them to go, okay, I will budge a little bit. So when it actually came to the process, it was very, very, I would say old schoolish almost. Like I took every field, I put it on the wall, and we put a picture of all the time and what was available, and we just went in order, primary season, and filled everything up. And then we were sitting back, and everybody's going, well, everything's full, but I've still got this much space I need. So, I know I'm simplifying a little bit, but there was a lot of dialogue of what Sports Council wants to do, how they want to get there, and then it was very important for them to visually see, like, wow, there's not that much. There's not enough to accommodate. I don't know if there's a specific piece I'm missing that you want to say. Obviously, I'm simplifying, but
I think too, you did beautiful. Taking that back to basics approach. Sometimes having that information and illustrating, it gives them an understanding, gives everyone an understanding of what's actually out there. But not only that, I think, and I was hoping you would touch on this a little bit. I mean, we started notifying them in the fall for December submittals, so that we could review them first and say, okay, we're missing this, sending the letters, giving them instructions, okay, this is what you still need to work on. So that kind of answers your questions too, how the city demonstrates a partnership with them in order to get them to compliance, because ultimately we want them to comply. We want to help them the best that we can within what we can do. Right.
And the process is a spreadsheet. Staff stay on top of it, and I'm sorry I missed that part, but that is the part that we really tried to hold the line, and what we tried to use as the leverage is to say, if you do not submit these things, you're not going to be in the meeting, and we're going to allocate your field space. So that was the major turning point, and we really wanted to make sure that people were compliant, because we were struggling with getting that. Now, I'd say we did very well this time. The residency is still something we talk about in the groups all the time. We talk about, because 70% does seem like a lofty number with today's age, with how things are, the rules on signing up for leagues, and just how leagues have changed in general. So, but other than that, that was a major component, and that did take us 3 months a couple, letters noticing, documenting, informing all parties that be from council down, hey, this is how we're handling it, this is what we're doing, and, informing everyone. So it was a lot of work, but I think it was very successful, and we're hoping that's the process continued forward. And this will be a big piece of that, and defining these things is a big part of that.
Any other questions as far as the process is concerned and the sports council bylaws? They do meet. We do have an annual meeting in November, and then we meet what?
Every other month.
Is that open to the public?
It is. It's a meeting just like this. The agenda's posted. All those things take place, so it's no different than commission. I will let you know a couple pieces of information. In my time involved with sports council, only one group has ever tried to get in, and they were voted down. The couple things we haven't touched, like the groups, travel ball. That is a big topic right now, and the leagues are evolving. They're learning. They are adapting travel ball into how they do things as well. It's just progression. Well, Little League does not, but Pony does. But for example, our Pony isn't willing to let it in. You know what I mean? So those are discussions.
So the applicant for the sports council is like a travel type organization?
No, but technically you could, if you met all the guidance, if you had a governing board and you came in and you said, hey, because you could say, hey, I'm a travel, we've had groups come in. I'm so-and-so, I have this team, I have 15 kids, 100% West Covina residents, and I can prove it. You know what I mean? So a travel team could come in, meet all the requirements, have their governing board, and then petition to be in sports council. And then sports council would vote them in or vote them out.
This phone.
So one of
JD, your phone.
One of the big questions I have is
we're looking to open at the end of May, and then we do have programming coming in. We're looking at a hybrid approach. Do you want to keep going?
Yes, yeah.
So it's not just adaptive. It is,
the field allocation is first and foremost. It's the hardest thing. But now, like I started seasons,
and it will be,
and Little League isn't what Little League used to be. Pony isn't what Pony used to be, and so figuring out what these groups are, these definitions are very important, because as we change how we prioritize, that's what we count on.
so no, we didn't ignore your special meeting, and I did say I would address it.
so what I was going to talk about was like the park use policy in general. So what I know that we're talking a lot about sports and how that works, but the park use policy that we're looking at, that addresses everything within parks, right? Or
Well, this is athletic facilities, so this is specifically for athletic facilities like our ball fields and lighting and things of that nature.
So this park use policy that we're attempting to put together is sports related only.
Correct.
It's not using the parks for other purposes like events or anything like.
Well, where it addresses that in this policy, like it states first and foremost that city events and everything would come first, and then user group second. So West Covina user group second. So
it's more of a sports field use policy rather than a park use policy, right?
Correct.
Because we're calling it a park use policy, so that was my understanding. I kind of thought we were going to discuss it was how will we utilize the parks in general, with obviously sports leagues being the primary, but we're not going to touch on other things besides sports, right?
I don't want to misspeak, but my understanding is most of this is towards the sports usage portion of that.
Okay.
And then, when it comes to our other park space, we're always trying to provide whatever we can, whether it be the community centers, whether it be bridge riders, whatever comes up.
That's what I was trying to kind of wrap around my head, the park use policy and like what components would that have? They would have the sports council bylaws, they would have policy use for fields like this agreement, and then it would also kind of encompass the municipal code.
That's correct.
And agreements for outside, like the agreements that the basketball league uses, for example. Is that this?
That would be a rental agreement. It's
So
separate.
then there's a rental agreement, and then facility use agreement from like school districts,
The senior softball commission did get their insurance.
like if they have their own facility use agreement.
Yeah, you would have to go through the school district to get that. But when I started here, we managed all the school's fields.
Oh, wow.
So when I started here, there was one person that did all field allocation, not only for us, but for the school
Where they use
district.
the
But
camera park.
things have all changed. As you know, the school district, I mean, just some history for you, the school district passed their bond and they've been putting it into their facilities. And they're charging not to make money, they're charging to keep their facilities up. And to be frank with you, it's, you know, it needs to be done. Another big aspect that I want to let you know about is, for example, you brought up, well, we're not going to talk about this, but field maintenance. Okay.
And they have already submitted.
We have so much usage that, okay, we go from season to season, from sport to sport, and sports are playing year round now. How can we take care of our facilities if we have no downtime? There is no way for us to maintain our turf, our football fields, or all those things. And those are things that come back on the city that they're like, oh, you're not doing this, you're not that. We spent a lot of money on fields last year, and you know what? If there's no downtime, it's not gonna take,
Can't we
it's not gonna
build
hold
that
up.
in?
It says you do. Rested periodically throughout the year.
Yes, but the leagues have grown so big that it's become more difficult to hold the lines on that.
Yeah.
But I think not only to add to that, because I see it wherever I'm at in the city,
Especially for park use.
when we've had this drought, where you have just, there is no rain, and the parks are being used nonstop. I agree. The school districts, some of the fields are actually being used also for practice pickup games and things like that. And I've seen some of the damage that has occurred to school property by outside users, you know. But there is no downtime anymore. Maybe part of that is weather, but part of that is the change in the way sports are definitely at the forefront, especially after the pandemic.
Kids play a lot more, in my opinion. I don't have any fact on this. I can just tell you that my kids are in sports and all these things. Kids play a lot more now than we ever did. You know what I mean? The season, like as we discussed, the seasons, they specialize now. They specialize at a younger age. They do that. A field, you can water a field and maintain a field, but if there's no downtime, it's not going to look good. Just so you know, in drought, we still water. We don't cut water on athletic facilities. We need. Our goal is to have safe playing surface. That is not easy to do all the time, but that is definitely the goal. You know, I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, you didn't really ask a question, but you know, some information for you.
Well, I think it speaks back to what Chair Torres, what you were mentioning, is if you categorize the different guidelines that we have in front of us, that ultimately, how does each component of what we're trying to do impact the community? There is no rep here today from Sports Council, so it would probably been a good idea to have that voice. There is no one here from the community to speak about some of these issues, but you know, we're all out there and we see the fields and we see the lighting and we see the issues with traffic and parking, but ultimately in the end, I think the guidelines are very specific. They keep the city safe, they keep the participants safe, and more importantly, it allows for the kiddos to have a good time and go out there and play, and for the families to enjoy that. And then when there's an anchor to that, such as a really nice, like at Friendship Park, a real nice play apparatus where families can go and watch one thing and kids can go do another thing, and you feel safe.
Yeah.
Or Cortez Park, where we have a really nice senior center, we have some activities there, we have that beautiful hill, and then you can see everything going on all at once. It's really, the parks are just beautiful here in the city. I know it's a lot, but I think if we just stick maybe to the guidelines and just keep that as a bumper in terms of how we can collaborate and accommodate legally what needs to be done so that we're following, we're not upsetting anything. We're not, even when it comes to, I think, the residency requirement, that I think probably does need to be looked at. But it seems to me also that limiting the number of applicants that a team or a league might call in, it almost seems like
Your question was about the sports council.
they should maybe self-police themselves. Because if a family is paying $200 or $300 per child, and then maybe you have multiple kids, and then you're not guaranteed playing time or things like that, it almost seems to me that falls on that individual who calls himself the president or the leader of that group to be a little bit more responsible about all that, because that's a little bit more realistic, I think. I don't
You
know.
are going to the facility.
Just my thought.
I've been at it a long time. My kids are in it. It's I don't want to speak out of turn or put words in anybody's mouth. It's a different time. I think I'm very much into evolving. You know what I mean? Like, we miss the boat on things sometimes. And you know what? How we recreate today is not how we recreated 10 years ago, 15 years, 20 years ago, and it's no different in league. So when I'm dealing with sports council, I very much try to do those things. The residency, as you discussed, I'm pretty frank with them. I'm like, please come up with realistic goals. Because I don't have to come tell you, like, hey, you're not at 70%. I don't know what number they can come up with, and it's a hard thing to wrap around, you know. So that's part of why we want to do this, because we want to be transparent. We want to let the community know what's going on, how we get to those places, and you know that we are being as fair as we possibly can to every sport. You know, when Roxanne gets back, we'll talk about the park use portion of that, because there might be something we're missing the boat on. You know, pickleball's the new craze. Those are all things that we try to pick up on and do those things, you know. So the leagues are very possessive and very proud. And that's a really, really good thing, but there are downfalls to that as well, you know. So any other questions?
What do other cities get? What is their percentage of in-house kids? 50% or 70%? I think
I mean, to be realistic, look, like Pony has changed their guidelines. You don't have to be a city resident anymore. You only have to live in the county, right? That's Pony's rules. That's not our governing rule. That's Pony's rules.
Oh, really?
And if they're under 70%, technically they should pay. You know, that's see how things are sticky and things change. You know, Little League, I've been telling Little Leagues to combine and just be West Covina, because then if they did that, we would know that they're 100% West Covina, either resident or go to school in West Covina.
Right.
Which could count as residency. And then I'm like, then you might get more field priority. Those are things that we all discuss, how you can evolve and do those things. But right now, West Covina Little Leagues are not simply all West Covina.
Well, it can't be Friendship Park would bring in a whole big Roland and Walnut.
I mean, I'm not looking at doing those, Paul. Like, I'm just giving you examples. But technically, no. If it was the city of West Covina Little League, it would be West Covina only.
Yeah.
No matter what, because the boundary would be West Covina, you know? So those are things that are all discussed and talked about there. You know what I mean? But you're right. In the old days, Galaxy Little League had its boundaries, which was Walnut, Valinda, County Incorporated, you know?
Weren't they at Shadow Oak at one time?
Galaxy was at Shadow Oak.
Yeah, but before that, Gallister.
That is before my time. I didn't do Gloucester,
Yeah.
but Shadow Oak was defunct when I got here, and then Galaxy was gone a little bit sooner than that.
Yeah,
You know?
too bad.
So, Roxanne, so they asked some questions. Obviously, we're talking about the facility, the athletic facilities and things, but Chair Torres had questions about park use agreements as well. Is that going to be addressed in this at all, or this is just, okay, so Roxanne can expand on that.
Yeah, I'll just repeat, just for the sake of repeating, the park use policy that we're talking about. So what I'm trying to envision in my head is the skeleton of what we're actually trying to do and produce. So is this park use policy going to be a document, almost like a guideline, a book?
Yes.
And when we call it a park use policy, it's very broad, right? So then one of my questions was, it seems like it's geared towards like athletics.
It's not.
So it's the park use, athletics would be a majority of it probably, but it's also included in any other use for the
Correct.
park.
So it would be any other use for park, of the park. The challenge is, again, we wanted to make sure that you had an understanding of what was currently on the books. So what's currently on the books is the municipal code and then the sports council. So that is what we have documented, other than applications for use of the park or the picnic pavilion. So obviously, like the general usage, we have something that already dictates that. That's the municipal code. So we're gonna take what's in the municipal code and put that into something, into a user guide or a park policy user guide, that the residents can go, oh, I want to reserve the field. I want to know how to do this. They can just get the document, download it, pick it up, whatever it is, and they'll have it at their fingertips, as opposed to, okay, let me look up the municipal code. We might be comfortable, looking for the various ordinances, but not everybody is.
Right. So so then just to kind of get on track with what our task is, the park use policy needs to have
We're governing, not governing.
sections or chapters.
Exactly.
So the park use policy will have a chapter on general use.
Correct.
And then we'll have a section on sports and
Correct.
athletics.
Correct.
And whatever other uses that we can define and pull out.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so that was, so then so far you've said the municipal code, the sports council bylaws, that will be in there somewhere. Policy for the field use, the specific agreements they have. And then also the school district policies if the school district's involved.
We wouldn't necessarily incorporate the school district into the community use.
Or some reference to it.
Right. What we would do is provide them with where they would need to go if they had questions regarding the school district
Okay.
or usage of their fields.
So
That's what we would do.
So
Yeah.
this is specifically for athletics.
So
And
this
so we have a
is
similar one for other facilities.
yes, and
Okay.
this is specifically for the allocation of those fields and what that looks like. Again, this is what's on the books. Let's see if it says when it was last.
So what would be helpful, I think, for us would be to have all that kind of broken down at our next discussion.
Absolutely.
Have, almost like your skeleton or your tree where you have the park use policy and then you have your flow chart with all the different policies that are encompassed in that, and then we can try to see if we can come up with a defined, approach to how we're gonna tackle it, because right now it seems really broad.
One of the, and again, tonight, the purpose, we said that we were gonna start, this is gonna take several meetings. Tonight, the purpose was to make sure that there was an understanding of what's currently on the books, so that if there's any questions, or if there's things that and again, you brought up a great point about that residency requirement. If there's things that we need to address, then, we want to address it. So a lot of the stuff hasn't been revisited, or hasn't been visited since forever.
And I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I think we're not clear on what's on the books. In general, I think we are, but it's so much that
It's a lot.
I don't know if we have any understanding at this point as far as what we're dealing with.
So starting with the sports council bylaws, do you have any questions on how that works or what's in there? Any other comments?
Well, the comment about the residency requirement, that would be one. Updating it in general would be the big comment. Because it was updated in 2007.
That's, the rest of them are pretty standard.
On that residency requirement, can it be graduated? I mean, if teams that are 70% or more, first choice, 51%, second choice.
The only concern I see about the residency thing is how are we gonna prove it? And who's gonna put the manpower into proving,
Yeah,
because if
well-
I have 6 nephews and I want to play baseball with my son, I'm gonna put them all at my address, and who's gonna say that they don't live there?
Yeah, we're not, and we don't have the manpower to go
You don't have the
knocking on
manpower to
people's
enforce
doors.
something like that. There isn't.
Good point.
So you know, we have to be realistic about setting that number and what we do with it. And do we care?
Right.
If kids from another city come and play,
Well-
I'll tell you what, if they're on the field playing, I know they're not breaking in my house,
Yeah.
okay?
So-
Well, the only, yeah, and I agree, the only slippery slope is that it could get out of control in the other way, right? So then, we might wanna have something
What do you mean, wait, I don't know what you mean,
where
out of
like West
control the other
Covina
way.
West Covina kids can't get into the league. There's not enough room. And it turns out like,
Well, we can
Right.
put something in the bylaws that,
right, so
You
then.
know, residents
we're
get
like
priority.
95
Just to be clear, we're making recommendations.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
right, recommendations, it's
95.
ultimately, it would be
Yes.
council to make those decisions, but yes, you would
what
be
she
making
said,
recommendations.
recommendation.
Yeah, we don't wanna make a recommendation that would result in 95% of the kids not being West Covina kids, right? Which probably won't happen, but we wanna at least have something there.
I don't know, does it happen, Mike? I think I think,
I wanna, I mean, I wanna give you guys my best advice, but I don't wanna speak out of turn and put words in anybody's mouth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
my guess is going to be that most kids want to play with their friends in the city they live in.
That's true.
That's gonna be my guess.
I don't think
Sure.
that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's.
You don't think
it's-
that's happening?
No.
I think it varies, but in my experience as a soccer coach for West Covina Youth Soccer, 70% of my kids, I would estimate, were not West Covina kids.
Yeah.
So, but that just might be my one team, who knows? But I think in general, I've noticed a lot of outside children, which is fine, but I just want to make sure that if we do revise it, we got to make sure there's safeguards in there to make sure it's not completely kicking out the West Covina kids, right?
Mhm.
They should still have priority somehow, but I would guess that league is at least half non-residents at least.
Can I bring you guys a scenario though? And this is what I struggle with this. This is just me talking to you. Like I said, we talk travel ball. I decide I want a travel ball team. I've taken Billy, Johnny, everybody from the league, 100% West Covina residents, and I've decided that the league isn't competitive enough for me. I've decided that I don't, it's not there. So I'm still a resident. I'm still recreating. Should I be allowed to play on a West Covina field? I meet all the criteria. I do all the stuff. I don't know, and I'm not here to I'm just giving you another example. I don't know the answer to it. The communities decide that, but the residency and all those things, the leagues are not what they used to be. They're not. It's different now. West Covina soccer is very competitive.
And then sports
Girls softball is
council,
very
too.
competitive.
Sports council is gonna have to weigh in too, because they're the ones that are probably in the front lines.
Yeah.
For me, I think the most important thing is that they meet the league's age requirements, not so much the city. Nobody wants a 14-year-old from La Puente to come in and play in Little League. Manage
Their
to.
coaches do.
Well, they love it, but we can't, that's their rules, though, the age. After that, as long as the West Covina kids get to play, then it should be open to anybody after they're all registered.
Yeah, because I've had experiences with families not being able to get in.
Yeah. The families.
Calling me and saying, hey, the register filled up so fast,
In
and
soccer,
soccer, and, I just have to tell them,
another piece of information to share with you. We spend 90% of the time in sports council talking about baseball issues. And baseball is not, like I said, we can't compare to soccer,
right. But yeah, it'll be an ongoing discussion. I just was curious because I think we also need to talk about the non-sports items as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, unfortunately, we talked about the sports a little longer than the speakers wanted us to, but the use of the non-sports facilities, I think, is important. I know that they brought up the Palmview Center. We have, what else do we have? Like Big League Dreams, maybe like the
Sportsplex.
Sportsplex. We have facilities that can be rented there too, right? Are the restaurants vacant or
The restaurants are vacant. The city will be going out for an RFP. They did release a couple of them. One prior, when was that? 2021 was one of them. They we released another one last fall. I think the timing was a little off. We don't think you want to release an RFP around the holidays. So we'll be releasing another one to see what kind of interest there is in a service provider providing those restaurant services at the sports class.
That's the second time they went out for RFP?
This will be number 3.
3? Okay.
This will be number 3.
So, let's see what else. I wanted to try to get a grasp, but I printed this out.
You can't see it, I'm supposed to.
That's our parks amenities from the.
Yeah.
It's on our website. But it basically has like the parks and then all the facilities.
What's available.
And it's outdated too, but not that bad. There's a few things missing on it, but before I forget too, one of the things I noticed was like our snack bars. Like, is there any ideas that have been thrown around to see if we could use those in any way outside of the typical maybe 20 to 30 uses a year that they get? Like, using them for other purposes, running those out, using them for something, because they're full kitchens, right, that we can potentially tap into. I know that
I don't want to say yes or no, but I want to let you know that the equipment's not ours. The building is ours, but we haven't replaced the equipment in the snack bars, the hoods, all those things. The leagues are responsible for all that. When it comes to their cleaning, dealing with the health department, all those things, the leagues do that. So, I mean, it is our facility and anything is possible, but it would have to be discussed and talked through because the equipment isn't ours.
So okay, so then just the infrastructure of the building and then everything inside it is the leagues. Yeah, it's just something I was thinking about because like when I volunteered for the pantry, God's Pantry at Cameron, I was just thinking about, okay, well, they have all their food and then maybe that could be something that could be used at the parks, the kitchen, for food banks or what have you. Stuff like, that's just an idea I had, but just in general, maybe we could utilize it because it is, at least Del Norte is vacant most of the time. They use it maybe during the...
But they use it during the week and then for their leagues. So
Yeah.
they use it their spring season right now, and that's 6 days a week. And then they take some time off and they have winter ball. But there is another snack bar at Del Norte that probably hasn't been open for 2 decades.
Yeah, because one of the ideas I have, which is probably never going to materialize, but I was thinking about like they could open like a small coffee shop there, right? Something, and then make some sort of revenue from that, maybe.
With the dog park, I think that's possible.
Yeah, the dog park's
There
there.
you go, dog park.
And lease it out, right? And maybe even the league could do it, right? And call it like a bar, cafe, whatever. But I'm just trying to think outside the box on how we can utilize all these facilities and park spaces we have and kind of put that in that park use policy at some point.
You could absolutely do that. If, again, the challenge really is going to come down to the equipment that's in there because it doesn't belong to the city. It belongs to individual leagues.
Yeah, so.
And then if it is a facility that we haven't used for a number of years, whatever, it comes down to the capital outlay. What can the city do to put in there and what can't? But anything's a possibility. I think those are great ideas.
Yeah. And then another thought was that when we do the park use policy, do we have any idea what the format's going to be as far as like parks, or are we going to have a general outline, or are we going to have specific sections for parks? Because each park's kind of unique, right? So in the park use policy, there could be a section that says Cameron Park and have everything there.
The general rules, like what is in the municipal code, that'll be spelled out.
Right.
And then it would be broken down by park, things that are specific to that park, because not all of the parks have the same amenities or the same types of uses. So that would be the thought process. And again, the template, what will your skeleton template, your draft, which will have something for you next meeting, and I would recommend that we meet again, not just our regularly scheduled meetings. It's going to take some time. You can make those recommendations as far as formatting is concerned. So you're not married to the draft and how it's presented to you. You can make those recommendations and what this body feels would be best for the community. Again, the recommendation is ultimately to
Yeah, and
council.
I know that the Sportsplex was one of the parks that kind of came up at the discussion the council had on it, right? So that's something that we have to look at too, like how are we gonna allow the public to utilize that space? Are the batting cages working right
The
now?
batting cages are working.
So are
We had
those-
a squirrel, was it a squirrel or something? It was a squirrel that got in there and ate.
Chew all the wires.
The belts on it.
So we had to
Yeah,
wait for the belts to come in and it was,
so are those obviously will be part of the park use policy?
and you have to govern that too. You'll have to dictate how, even things like batting cages can get really contentious too.
And remind me of the facilities up there, batting cages.
There's a batting cage,
Baseball
there's the
fields.
indoor soccer pavilion,
Multi-sport.
there's the outdoor
There's a couple
grassy
playgrounds.
area.
There's
What's
like,
that
yeah.
outdoor grassy area supposed to be for?
Could be, well, we've
It-
had gatherings there. It could be a soccer,
It could
currently
be-
set up for soccer.
Yeah, it's currently set up for soccer. I mean, we can set it up for other uses. That panel of the
Okay.
turf, the artificial turf, we have 2 playgrounds up there. We have the 6 ball fields, the 2 restaurants.
No.
Yeah, we said the batting cages and then the office space.
So, yeah, so then,
I guess you'd have to make the recommendation you want it to be a
so the
community
park
park.
use policy for the sportsplex specifically would have to make sure that we define the, you know, the uses where
I think-
rentals, public use, timing, when the public can come and just go in and use it.
And I think the approach is gonna be, once we get a draft that we're, okay, you know, this is something that we can get behind, we can recommend, we still wanna talk to the public at large, you know? And so, you know, these meetings are still open to the public, but sometimes you just have to have those open forums and invite the public too. So this is gonna take a little bit of time. I would like to say that we'll have something to present to council at some point in July. That's my goal. But it's gonna require us to meet more than just every other month. It's gonna require us to meet maybe even sometimes twice a month in order to meet that. I think this is important, and I hope you'll consider that.
Yeah, it seems like a big undertaking.
It
just
is.
Talking about it, but.
I mean, even, you know, talking offline with JD a little bit, you know, he was talking about insurance requirements. Well, why do you require insurance? Well, we do. We require liability insurance. Well, you know, his experience has been when one of the examples that he uses is the city of Walnut. When my kids played in Walnut, I had to only provide medical. Why wouldn't you provide, you know, why did the leagues have to provide liability insurance? Well, all of our leagues provide liability insurance. Whether you're aware of it or not, what the individual parent or the youth provides to their league, that's what they provide. But what the city requires as far as renting a facility, you know, we require that liability insurance versus, well, his question was, well, what's the difference of just like me wanting to go play baseball? You don't require liability insurance then. It's, because the risk is down, there's a different use. It's a different use, a different intent. So those are the types of those are opportunities that we can navigate together when we're talking to the public, because it's, you know, some people's experience is just limited to what they're used to, and it just takes time in explaining that. And our goal when it comes to liability is really to protect the city, right? We don't get anything out of.
It could be, I can give you an example.
Yeah.
We just had a few years back at Cortez Park, volunteers working on the field, drives on the field, no permission, doesn't talk to the city, doesn't talk to anybody, breaks a water line. Doesn't seem like a big deal. You think a water line's easy to fix, but it was an asbestos line. So the removal cost $12,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, the repair, let's say it's a few grand, but should that be the city's responsibility? We didn't drive on the field. You know, so those are things that the insurance, like luckily insurance covered that. They had the construction insurance and they covered that. So those are things, obviously, you know, JD was talking about kids and their insurance, but it's more than that.
Which is, which is a great point, you know, that is an important point, but the city has another scope too that we're taking a look at.
Getting liability insurance is a smart business move.
Yeah, so, but articulating that, putting that in writing, it needs to be put in writing. Not that the liability insurance is in writing, but saying, okay, well, 2 people, you know, walking across the street, you know, you're just casually using the space is different than a league using the space, or a tournament happening. It's a different risk. Yeah, different risk, different capacity.
Yes.
But those are all, excellent points.
And I also think that what they fail to realize with that is $1 million policy does not cost $1 million to get. It's about $300. And so it's not a huge investment for an entity.
And if it's an organized league, if Little League, they get their insurance through Little League. Pony goes through Pony. For the most part, if they're affiliated with a
An
group,
organization,
yeah.
they'll be able to obtain the insurance.
Yes, it's,
I agree that I think our group, the chair, I think we should meet a little bit more often to talk about all those issues in a more organized, using a more organized methodology of how we're approaching it. Because even your Chair Torres, even your idea of allowing an outside group to come in and use a city-owned facility, a building, but the equipment doesn't belong to us. I mean, they could come in and burn the place down, or they could come in, use it with good intentions, and then they could get hurt, or they could hurt someone in the community. So I think the discussion about the ideas is really important, but the reality of the cost and all of these responsible things that ultimately the commission has to put forward, working with the city, I think it's worth the discussion, and I don't think we can do it in one night.
No, and that was never our intent, yeah. And when we talk about the special meetings, and Deb brought it up with, well, we're limited in the comments on what, special meetings, what's on the agenda for the special meetings. So as much as I love hearing the public, if I can find a way to work it in to what's on the agenda, we're gonna do that. But the purpose of the special meeting is really to address those specific items, to give you guys the opportunity to really delve into it, to ask these questions. If we would have brought a policy with us tonight, even a draft one, and then brought this, there's no way. There's no way we would have been able to get into it, because I think as much as, the parks aren't just for sports, sports are a big component of it. And the biggest use is the sports council, and they have an interest in an investment, and they provide those services to our youth. So that's why it's so important to have this discussion first, so that you know what's on, what we're juggling before we move any further. So I'm not trying to muddy the waters, not trying to taint anything, it's just an honest discussion. I don't know that, again, how many people have had the opportunity to really take a look at it.
And to piggyback, you said muddy the waters. I think that was a great example. Ultimately, sitting in my chair dealing with what I deal with, my goal is to have clear water.
Yeah.
And I wish I could tell you it's not muddy, but it is at times. So that's ultimately our goal. That's what we want. We want to know what we want you to make a recommendation to council, and then we can move forward, and we have a clear path of how we're supposed to move.
Any other questions regarding the field allocations as it stands now, or the sports council and how that works together?
Well, what, I guess the details, what fields are we dealing with?
all of them, the ones that can't.
All of our fields.
So.
And currently, just so you know, currently all our fields are allocated to sports council members. There is no rentals. There is no travel ball teams. There's nobody out there. It is allocated all to sports council
So
members.
take a look, again, this hasn't been revisited, but it's a good talking point. If you take a look at the agreement for use of athletic facilities, Exhibit 2, and number 4, Attachment A.
And maybe that's a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Maverick is not allocated to sports council members.
Right,
About
this isn't
the-
just sports council, though,
Correct.
the facility allocation. So I just, again, this is outdated, but it's good for us to talk about.
Okay, so then it has the park, the league, time frame, maintenance,
And this is very outdated.
And then Orangewood's still the rule, I mean, Orangewood, it has Sunset Field, which we no longer have, and it has Orangewood, which is not Pony Colt anymore. Orangewood is West Media Soccer.
Soccer.
Yeah, and then just looking at these items, that's probably a comment I want to add. We might want to do some sort of living document, because then, things get out of date quick, so that every year maybe we could look at it.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things too with that is that, we bring these annually to council, even if it's something that's on the consent calendar, that this is what it is, this is who has what this year, and doing being more proactive, and not just relying what's been done in the past.
If we could put it in the policy itself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This
You put it,
policy.
this policy, or the usage, the fuel allocation usage is brought to the city council annually. Like those are things that a policy would articulate.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then it won't get as far out of date. You'll keep it.
Exactly.
And I know it's been kind of asked before in general, but has there ever been consideration to open up the sportsplex for the kids to use as, part of the sports leagues?
Right now, this body can make that recommendation. If we don't want to allow that space to be available for sports council usage, we could make that, this body could make that recommendation, and it would be up to the city council if they choose to go that direction or not.
I would be okay making the recommendation because
I would agree with you.
the intent I think would be to address what Mike's already verbalized pretty clearly, right? That their fields are tight. He has a really hard time with allocating. So if anything, I would say a portion of the time.
Yeah.
It could still be rented to tournaments and leagues and softball, but part of the policy should kind of define a period where the league could use it.
And that's exactly what a policy would do. You could make that recommendation that, that between the hours of 2 to 5, I'm just making that up, on these days it's available for this. You could do that in a policy.
So I just mentioned the sportsplex possibly being used by the leagues.
And then my response to that was, they can make that recommendation.
Yeah, and just so you were aware, there's a couple factors that don't, like the restaurants aren't running right now, but when the restaurants are running, if they're selling alcohol, Little League and Pony are out. Their bylaws and their regulations don't let them do that. So there are, I don't know every factor, but there are other factors as well.
So in the RFP we put out, is that something that, are we allowing that? Or is that just going to be up to the applicant or the person trying to come in?
I personally don't know how to answer that question. I mean, the sportsplex is a unique thing, and I think we need to really look at, how we're going to survive, how we're going to maintain it. There's a lot of infrastructure there to run it. Like, I want to be working in West Covina the way I have. Maintaining that park is a major undertaking, and if we aren't making revenue, I think that could be challenging at times. So I think those are all things that need to be discussed.
Yeah. So, but as far as like those policy concerns, this is really user guide use for the public.
Yeah, my thought was more along the lines of probably like 80-20, right? Keep it 80% profitable maybe, where it's profit driven, and then have some allocated time for the kids to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
that's a great point.
If it's sustainable.
Yeah, that's a good point. And those are all things that, those are recommendations that you can.
Yeah, we'd have to do our vision of a master plan for the sportsplex.
That's right.
And if a vendor's going in there, they're thinking they're going to cater to adult leagues and tournaments where they would want to sell alcohol to boost their revenues.
And that was always.
And so that would put little leagues out.
Because the intent, I think, of that facility was for youth, right?
No,
No?
it was for adult softball.
Mhm.
And adult softball died in the leagues, and they didn't stay up on it.
When we built that
But
facility.
it'll come back.
In 2000, whatever, when was it built?
07.
So then that was the intent, softball?
Mm-hmm.
That place was built for adult softball.
Men's
Okay.
softball leagues. So I don't know if women's leagues played up there. I know men's leagues played there and it was viable. But they went there and they played a game and they waited if there was a tournament and they would drink and eat and be merry and go play another game.
Nobody expected to turn into youth baseball.
Yeah.
Nobody expected that.
That was
And
not
they
the
were late
issue.
to the boat, they were late to that.
And so now, how is it operating as a primarily softball?
We're trying to do, I mean, the Sportsplex is, we're trying to run everything and be as diverse as possible. Trying to have, you know, youth
We have-
baseball,
yeah.
girls softball, adult softball, senior softball. So we're trying to be as diverse as possible.
For a fee.
Oh,
It
Yeah.
has to be.
Oh, yeah.
It has to make a revenue. It's-
Yeah, we're in debt, so I forget the amount.
I mean, those are all,
It was around 10 million, I think.
those are all discussions. I mean, again, those are recommendations, not anything that we can,
Right. We just,
you
So
still
that-
have women's
our
softball
responsibility
league?
is to.
What's that?
Is there still a women's softball league?
I do not know if there's, I think they
Is
have
it
co-ed.
Yeah, they have co-ed.
Co-ed, but not, I don't think there's
Oh.
women.
Does the revenue we get go towards the bonds, paying those down?
I don't know.
No. So the revenue, I'm assuming right now probably just goes back into the operation.
Probably just the maintenance of it all
I would think so too.
and the personnel to open it and run it,
All right.
city staff.
And then as far as you know, we're still moving forward with maintaining it, right? We're not looking at
Well,
RFPing that out.
right now, I think though, at some point, those discussions will have to be had. But right now, it's still a city-run facility. But that would not be a policy, that would not be part of this policy. Because this is just governing use.
Right. And hours of operation for it right now, are there?
Right now, we're running it in the evenings from, starting at 5 o'clock. We do have reservations that are up there. We still have the tournaments on the weekend. Obviously, when it was raining, we couldn't. And then the rain also delayed quite a bit of our, the work that the staff was doing up there. Because there was only so much you can do and safely in the rain.
And there is time open to the public. It's very popular. There's a West Covina, I don't know if it's West, I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to say it's West Covina seniors, but there's a senior league that plays up there on
Yeah.
Thursday mornings.
Yep.
And, you know,
Is that the time you were saying it's open to the public?
they don't pay to go in, you know,
What's the time?
Thursdays, and they start at 10.
Like 9, yeah, I was about 9.
10, they run
10
10 to about 2 o'clock. And they're actually, you know, they're actually very competitive and it's very much used.
60 and over league or something?
I think they're 55 plus.
55 plus.
And when you say
I used to
open,
play on that team.
I'm playing that too.
You do
It's
play
a good
on
time. You guys go out and have a good time.
I mean, it looks good.
Yeah.
I play Mondays and Fridays at Cameron.
And then Thursdays over
look
there.
competitive, so I kind of like sit out.
The major pluses there on Thursday. Don't sit out. You know.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
and during those hours, it's open to everyone or
Yes.
just those?
Yeah, you
just-
can, during those hours you can.
Oh, okay. Just noted it, because I wasn't sure what the hours were.
Are we using it for the 4th of July?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
That was great.
And, oh yeah, that's a good point, because are we looking at utilizing, because we've been utilizing the soccer field, right, for events? So is that something that we are gonna include in that policy as well? And so far, have we been the only organization to use it?
No, we have a soccer league that's up there.
No,
We're
I'm saying,
reserving
I'm
it.
sorry, have we been the only organization to use it for something other than soccer?
No, there was a festival there. There was also another dinner.
Yeah, there've been some reservations
Yeah.
up there by other other organizations that have
So
used it. Yeah,
that's-
there was a festival, there was like a festival there. There was a dinner that a nonprofit, but it was a paid reservation. I don't know that it came to fruition or not. I don't know that it did yet. There was someone that came up there to look at the space for quinceañera. So.
So that's what my next question was, are we are we kind of advertising that facility for some
Yeah,
multi-purpose
so
use?
here's the challenge with that though. It can be used, but like all of the tables and the chairs, that person that's reserving it would have to bring in all the tables and the chairs, or they'd have to rent them from someplace. So we don't have it. Yeah, we don't provide
Same
it.
with the
So-
caterer.
Yeah, same thing with the caterer. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky sometimes for people that are looking to hold events is, okay, do I know someone, do I have someone? And sometimes they'll go to other venues that are a one-stop shop. They don't necessarily have to worry about that. But that's just, I mean, that's the reality of it.
Oh, okay. So we don't have the
It's the venue only, it's not the,
Because
Yeah.
oftentimes, a lot of our equipment, we use it at a one-time thing here and there. Yeah, we can kind of schedule around that. But a lot of our facilities, we rely on our tables and chairs, at the facilities.
I think that holds 450, 500. Yeah, we're not, our equipment, we're equipped for 200, 225,
Yeah,
but
it's
not 500.
the soccer venue?
The soccer venue holds about, I think 450. I'm not exactly sure of
Yeah,
the number.
450, 500, just depends on
Yeah.
what you have going on in there and what the setup is.
Oh, okay. And the turf there is still the original? The old
No, it's
turf?
been replaced at some point, but I don't remember the last time it was replaced.
Oh,
When you say turf, do you mean the actual playing turf on the softball fields or the grass soccer turf?
the soccer.
Yeah, it's not the original turf from the original from the original facility. It was replaced, but I couldn't tell you when.
Okay.
Yeah. Turf's life expectancy is about 10 years.
All right, the last thing I was gonna just kind of run through was, I don't know if, I kind of we went through the bylaws, but would it be something to do the next meeting where we kind of walk through the parks and just kind of touch on each park?
We can. We can touch on the amenities of each park.
So Aroma
What
Park,
we can do that. We can also bring a draft policy, but I wouldn't do both in one night.
well,
I
I'll just run through them quickly then. The Aroma Park, that's
It's a
nothing.
pocket park.
We don't really need to talk about that. That has a playground, I think, right? So, the complex, we've talked about at length already. The California Parquet, same thing, just a playground. So, Cameron Park and the community center.
Yeah.
I know we haven't really talked about the community center, but is that gonna be part of the policy as well? Or is that gonna be something separate?
We already have rules and regulations for renting the facilities.
So that's gonna have to be another attachment to the park use
I
policy.
don't know that it necessarily needs to be, are you talking about like the Cameron Park Community Center and the senior center? What we could do is we can show you what we have on the books right now for reserving those facilities.
So that won't count as part of the policy?
It could, it could be recreation facilities if you want to go down that route. But we're looking at, yeah, it's more,
It's better to keep it, it's better to
Yeah.
keep it separate.
yeah.
Okay. Same with the senior center? Yeah. Because that's the other facility we have, and then the last one is Shadow Oak,
We
right?
have Shadow Oak,
Palmview.
Palmview.
So then, all those facilities won't be encompassed into the park use policy?
No, they're
So we have, like,
facility use
separate-
versus park use.
They'll have separate documents for each one, or do they all fall under one?
They're pretty much the same, but some things, just depending on the facility, the amenities are a little bit different. So if you were to come in to reserve the facility, you would get a list of, okay, you get your do's and your don'ts, and then you would also get what facility, like what amenities are available, what you can use it for, what the capacity is in each of those facilities. But that's more on an individual rental basis. And then the way that we handle like our nonprofit organizations that are looking, and this is outside of this, I mean, it could be sports or it could be non-sports nonprofit organizations, is that if they are a West Covina based nonprofit, that they have their nonprofit status, they check off some of those boxes, or if they're not West Covina based, they're a regional nonprofit that provides service to the city of West Covina. I think a great example of that would be the San Gabriel Valley, the NAACP of San Gabriel Valley. It's regional. We know we have a relationship. They provide service in the city of West Covina. We do allow for usage of those facilities with the fee waiver, so they wouldn't necessarily have to waive the fee, but there's certain requirements that they have to meet. And then there is a cap on what we're allowed to waive administratively. And we do the math and have attach a value to it, and that's how we stay within our policy, our administrative policy for that. So that seems to be working.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was just curious because it makes sense to have them separate since they are a little bit, I guess.
And Cameron, since its inception, has ran differently and been on its own. I mean, it's been not for profit, but there's been fees attached to Cameron since the day it opened.
Right. Because that's another loan we have, right?
Not for the loan. I mean, obviously, historically speaking, it was more like they said, "Hey, we're going to build this, and you need to maintain. You need to make sure you pay for itself. The operation of it."
Oh, okay. Del Norte. No comments on Del Norte. Just we have the dog park and I noticed that was part of that municipal code, right?
One more time. The
The
dog
dog
park.
park. It's in
It
the
is in
park
the
usage,
municipal code.
So, Friendship. We already talked about that. Galster. I don't think there's much.
The nature center
The
and
nature
the
center.
playground.
Is that the state, right? It's
There-
funded by the state?
There is a grant that it was used to build the nature center into, I guess, what do you want to say? Build it and.
To purchase the facility,
Yeah,
furnish the
purchase it.
facility.
Acquire,
Yeah.
thank you, to acquire, but, so there's certain things that we can and can't do in order to stay within the grant guidelines. But there is a nature center, there was a nonprofit that was running the nature center. They're no longer running it, and that's been for quite some time, Mike.
So it's been closed.
Yeah.
Okay.
SGMRC was running it, and they have since, I believe, the whole organization. The organization is not defunct, but the person that was running the organization, unfortunately, has passed, and that kind of changed the dynamic.
Oh, okay. So that's something else we probably need to look at.
We've sent out letters. We've been trying to get it back up and running. Look for alternative uses. Like I said, we sent out a mailer to anyone that we thought would be in the same thing to see if they're interested, and we just didn't get much feedback. So yes, it is something we're looking to staff, or not staff, but get back up and running in some way, shape, or form, but have not been able to.
And who owns all that stuff inside? We do?
We
or-
do. The city
or the
does.
organization?
It was SGMRC, St. Gabriel Mountains Regional Conservancy, owns some things in there, but the tables, chairs, equipment, that's all city property.
All the artifacts and that's all ours.
I don't want to say all the artifacts. I think some of the artifacts might be SGMRC.
Oh, okay. Sounds complicated.
You have a park system, it's made up of 16 parks, and they're all unique.
Yeah. And then Gingrich, I don't think there's anything we need to talk about on Gingrich. Just the basketball, I think, playground.
It's identified in the CIP, so it is a capital improvement project.
For
We're
the
trying.
for the
We never
playground,
got
right?
With the
the
basketball court.
playground in there yet, did we?
Well, that's next, I think.
I just had a conversation today. I said I wanted a playground there. We don't know. We'll see what's happened. But obviously, there's a lot of playgrounds that need to be done, and you guys are all part of that. Measure A money's going to come up. All those things are going to happen. But Gingrich, it's prioritized and discussed, and the hope is to utilize some funds there.
Good.
And I think in general, just a quick note, the Friendship Park, like we really need to use that as a model.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I agree.
And if it requires waiting a year for additional monies for Measure A, what have you, maybe wait additional year and have a bigger pot to build something similar. Because I know the playgrounds are very expensive, but
Oh, yeah.
I think, yeah, just seeing the outcome and the attendance and then the use.
I mean, that's one way to look at it. I mean, $1 million,
$500.
that was we had funds for that. It's a beautiful playground. The footprint, everything, having the means definitely made it nicer. Depending, I think our allocation is about $340,000 a year. So to get to that point, I mean, 3 years of your funds, I mean, that's for the council to decide. But having 16 parks, my hope is to be fair to everyone and get it done as soon as possible.
Yeah, I just see it because the Cortez is good, but not as good as Friendship. So I know we did Cortez, right? It's a good playground, nothing bad about it, but just when you kind of put the two side to side.
Well, we're talking a quarter of the cost as well.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. So then it seems to me like the investment's worth it and the wait's worth it just because of the outcome and the.
Friendships, it's beautiful.
It is.
And every time I go there, even though I live on the north side, I drive all the way on the south. It's packed. At least when I've been there.
The other thing too is there's lots of aspects to look at because, for example, if you don't have to touch the footprint, you can do a pretty cool playground for a little bit of cost. So there's a lot of things to take into account when you're doing the playgrounds. Like concrete work, cutting out, grading, doing all that. That's a big chunk of fun. So for example, Woodgrove has a very big footprint that a lot might be able to be done for a little. So there's different things that you can look at, different things that can be done.
Right. Cool. So Heritage, I know we have a Taylor House there.
Taylor House.
Is that going to be part of the whole policy?
So we're developing an application. So that'll be a facility. So Taylor has to be a facility.
So it'll be kind of the same as the community center, separate?
Yeah.
All facilities.
So for that use, we won't cover it in the, okay.
Yeah.
Maverick, that's a big conversation, but we'll that's going to obviously be included, right? So
There will be a conversation about that too.
the equestrian items will be part of the park use policy.
I would think so.
And then we'll exclude Maverick Field just because of it's leased out right now, right? So we don't really
I'll
have.
give that agreement.
Would the agreement be put into the park use? Like, would there be something that stipulates if you have an agreement and look, it doesn't necessarily mean just the Dukes. We've had discussions with potential users for the equestrian center. So I don't know if there's something stated in there. I don't know. In the agreement?
My recommendation would be that we would have information about separate use agreements. I think I would feel more comfortable doing that so that people understand that the city has that authority to enter into use agreements, and we're not trying to hide anything. But that would be the way that I would write it.
Perfect. Orangewood Park, soccer, that's all going to be part of it too, right? I know that I've heard in the past the use of the field and having it available to others. So that might be something we might want to talk about. I know the league's not too fond of it just because they care for the field, right? They maintain it.
They are a very good user group as far as taking care of their field, and the capital outlay they put into their facility is a lot. But the discussion hasn't been about the fields. The discussion's been more about the playground.
The access.
Yeah.
And it's one of our newer playgrounds, but it's in the back. And when they close off the field for renovation, it closes off the playground. So that's been a different discussion.
And then we have a playground in the front that's outdated. So, and then we have the skate park, and then the hockey.
Hockey's a facility, isn't it?
Hockey's also a facility use agreement.
So the soccer complex will not be a facility, it'll just be part of that. But the skate park will also, the soccer and skate park will be part of it.
The skate park, yes. Yeah, we
Okay.
can have those discussions, yes.
Palmview, I know we had someone speak about that, so then, do we have any idea of the future use of that corner facility? The Palmview?
The Palmview facility, so right now it's slated to open at the end of May. The resident brought up, that they heard that, we are looking at adaptive recreation, which we are, that is the truth. But we're also, we are looking at other programming too. So it will be a combination of both. One of the reasons we looked at adaptive recreation for that space is because of the way that it's laid out is very accessible. And at the end of the day, we can do more in that area of adaptive and inclusive play. And so it won't just purely be adaptive recreation, there will be other programming, but there will be adaptive recreation at that facility. And so we've looked at partnering with nonprofit organizations. We looked at talking with Regional Center because there's funding that goes along with that. So we're looking just to be more responsible to all of our residents and everybody's ability.
Can we have the school district, don't they have a organization for special needs at one of their school sites?
We have had conversations with West Covina Unified about adaptive recreation, but all these things are going to take some time. So what I had explained to Teresa was that we're going to publish what the program is going to look like, but it's going to be evolving. So we're going to keep adding to it. Right now we don't have staff at that facility, and that was one of the challenges in opening that facility. So we have a pretty good set program, and then we're just going to keep building from there.
And that'll be a facility separate from the.
Well, that's no different than like the senior center.
The senior
yeah,
center.
The senior center has a set of programs that we offer at that facility. This will be the same thing with Cameron. There's a set of programs, and then separately you can do facility reservations, but there'll be separate programs with offerings. Same thing with Shadow Oak. They all, you want those recreation classes and those opportunities, yeah.
Okay, so Shadow Oak, anyone have any comments on that one? Walmerado, and then Wood Grove. So that's all the parks. I think we covered everything. All right. So do we talk about the next meeting now, or?
I agree.
So how do we go about scheduling that? Do we want to just hear it at our next regular meeting, or?
I think we need to, let me just take a look at the calendar. I would say that we would schedule something sooner rather than later, but would you do a sports council meeting this month?
Yes, off the top of my head, I don't know the date, but I want to say.
The 25th?
Yeah.
Is that this month?
Yes. The 24th, right? The 25th?
24th is a Monday.
Is that
25th.
sports council a good forum to kind of bring it up to them as well, or?
We're gonna let them know, yeah. We have to include all of our,
So then after that would be ideal, right? So that way you had feedback from them for the next meeting?
I would say, unless you want to meet on a different day for a special meeting, is there anything that would prevent us from doing that?
Just the ability of the use of the room.
Well, our next meeting's on the 9th, right, May 9th?
Yeah.
So did we want to have it before then or after then?
Well, that's where it's gonna get tricky, because we wouldn't be able to do the 2nd, which is Tuesday, because that would be a city council meeting. We wouldn't be able to do the 25th, because it's sports council. We won't be ready with everything by the 18th. So, we could look at the 26th would be the next, in my mind, would be the next available opportunity.
April 26th? Okay.
But we would confirm that after we check the availability of this space, to make sure there's no conflict.
Okay.
And if there isn't, then we can schedule a special meeting for the 26th. Again, I think we would focus on, this would be meeting number 2, focusing on this. And then if you want to talk about, we need some direction from the commission as far as agendizing what the offer for the bench, if we want to get into more detail. That I would recommend we do that on the 9th, not on the 26th, separate and apart. And then also having that conversation about the parcel for Cameron, that would be at a regular scheduled meeting. I get how I get how the public sees it as park use. It is because it's a usage of that space, but not necessarily in the same vein. Yeah. So I would say we would agendize that.
We had a discussion on it, right? So I can't remember the action items, but there was some sort of direction on it.
There was a discussion on that parcel,
That was it.
There was.
and
I think the next step was a meeting?
Community meeting.
a community meeting.
Well, I don't want to confuse it. We've talked about community meetings for Measure A, because we need to do that soon. Depending on whether we sit on the money or not, we need to have a community meeting. So is the community, that the parcel could be a part of that meeting, but it wouldn't be the focus of the meeting, correct?
On the 9th?
No. They're talking about a
In the
community
future.
meeting in the
From what I
future.
recall, the meeting was intended just to get,
My recommendation would be
Input.
this,
Input
and
on
this
use.
would go back to the park master plan. That's how you would approach it. And through your park master planning process, you would have community outreach and engagement meeting. That parcel would be ideal to approach the parks master plan. And I know we talked about that
yeah.
at our last meeting, and I know that we discussed having that discussion brought up at our May 9th meeting. I would go through the Parks Master Plan process for that. Otherwise,
Is that parcel in the master plan?
we have to develop one.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it's not.
It's another task.
And this body has a lot of work to do.
And then just in general though, like what are our options in the interim? Because obviously the master plan, the project itself is gonna take,
Well,
Years.
Mike's gonna get a weed whacked in the.
I don't want to put a time frame. I don't want to make any promises. I do not want to overcommit. Our hope is to at least get it leveled and grass and turf and take the fencing down. I don't know when we're going to get to that because we're trying to do it on our spare time, but that is our hope for the time being to alleviate the immediate.
because that's what we did at Palmview, right?
Correct.
We demolished it and we graded it and now there's grass there.
Correct.
If I may, real quick, we have a community budget workshop on the 26th.
Oh,
I
that's
don't
right. Yeah.
want to,
That's not important. Just kidding.
would you be agreeable to a Monday night?
I know.
Yeah,
No?
I'll be coming back into town from Oakhurst, which is about 300 miles away, but I will be here in time.
Does that make me look
Whether I travel.
If they're talking about the 24th.
We're alert in the morning.
Saturday.
Alert in the morning.
And then the Thursday is for what, the 27th?
I gotta check with my wife. She might not like my Saturdays.
We're alert in the morning.
24th or the 27th? We're looking at the calendar, we're looking at either the 24th or the 27th. We'll look at availability for this room. But
Okay.
yeah, the 26th, I want to make sure that we don't schedule anything that day in the event you guys want to go to that budget workshop.
The 27th is not good for me.
So we'll look at the 24th.
24th is fine. The 25th is fine, the 26th is fine.
Do you have to, but would that be difficult for you guys to prepare for the budget workshop, having that Monday night? Okay.
We're prepared.
Make sure the dog parks and the CIP.
It's easy to prepare.
It is in the CAP, we've had CAP money.
It's easy.
I'm giving you my comment in advance of the budget workshop. Budget the dog park.
So we're looking at the 24th,
Mhm.
6 PM.
The 24th?
We'll confirm
Oh,
this space.
Okay.
oh, okay. But you just let us know.
As long as I don't have a flat tire, I'll be home.
Monday, 24th, same time, 6 PM. That
Yeah.
generally work for everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Monday?
8 o'clock in the
He
morning?
wanted to do Saturday at 8 in the morning.
Why don't we do this earlier? We're alert in the morning.
Could we go
Morning,
earlier
morning,
since the money
yeah.
could be
Yeah.
out?
Out of town.
I'm up at
We
5
could do
o'clock.
it earlier.
Is everybody available earlier? Like, would everybody want to do a 5 o'clock?
Or
I'm
4
driving
o'clock?
back.
On Monday, no,
Too close?
I can't do.
I mean, is that cutting it too close?
I
I
work
can,
until
I'll make
5:30.
sure I make it. I'm just that way, so.
Sherry?
5
I
o'clock?
can't do 4.
Can
I,
you 5?
5:30 is better, but I might be able to do 5.
I think we should just keep it at 6.
Okay.
If everyone's okay with it, because I work till 5:30.
That makes it a
But I
little
could, I
funky.
could take the time off. Rather not.
Works for me.
6?
Anytime.
6 on the
5,
24th.
5:30,
Now,
6
he
o'clock.
ain't now he gonna do anything, so. Even if it's free, I just forget about it.
Okay, well, I think it was a
We'll
good,
revisit the 9th on the 24th, if there's anything else that we need to add to that agenda. Go ahead.
No, finish, you go ahead.
Um, we'll have a better idea if we need to bring this back up, the park policy on the 9th, or if we just want to keep it separate. If we want to keep park policy just as a special meeting, I don't know.
As long as we're productive, I don't mind keeping them separate,
Was this productive for you tonight?
somewhat,
Okay,
to be quite candid.
that's fine.
Give you more understanding though of what.
I think, yeah,
I don't have a
I
driving
thought it was,
license.
I thought it was productive. I like that the public came out, that was really, it was kind of energizing. And it was just a little disappointing that we were not able to speak to them in more detail about what their concerns were, or what they wanted, because that's also very helpful when we're moving in a certain direction. It's not a vacuum, but yeah. So are we agendizing the benches, the memorial bench?
Yes.
Yeah, for the 9th.
Yeah.
For the 9th?
And then at some point, it might be, even though we were talking about it already, to just give them an update on Cameron, the
You
empty
can put
lot.
that on the agenda.
And then again, even though we touched on it, the Pondview Center at some point.
We'll put that on the mix.
Just a quick update,
Yeah, absolutely.
assuming that they might want to come back.
You know, Roxanne, JD's a friend of mine. He's a talker. Sometimes you just gotta cut him off.
It's okay.
You gotta go.
Yeah,
Great
it's
guys up
okay.
here say, I gotta go back.
He's
He'll talk.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
You know,
but
he's a great guy. Don't
he is. We get along.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get along.
He rags on me. We play softball together, so. You have thick skin around me.
Okay. It's okay, but thank you. But it's okay.
All right, I think that's it, right? Everyone all set? I think we got all the direction. So we'll adjourn at 8:24. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And the speaker cards is, I wrote notes on the back, I don't know if I was supposed to do that.